Hawaii Tourism Conference is happening right now in Hawaii, and we're bringing the leaders from the tourism industry here to our studio.
They will be taking our questions and yours live to talk about the state's #1 economic driver. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suji and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in here to Spotlight Now on Hawaii News Now. We are excited to start a sort of second season here of Spotlight Now. Thanks for all of you for tuning in and joining us today to talk about tourism is one of our partners of this show, the Hawaii Tourism Authority. We're going to get to our first guest in just a moment, but we want to encourage all of you to engage in this conversation as we talk about tourism in our islands by scanning the QR code or by entering your question or comments into the Facebook section of our page at Hawaii News Now.
And joining us now is Mufi Hannemann, of course, the president of HLTA and the chair of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Your annual conference now underway. Tell us a little bit about who's at the convention center and what they're talking about.
Well, this is the premier conference of tourism hospitality industry. It happens once a year. And so we have folks who are intimately involved in ensuring that we market and we manage tourism well. We have experts from Washington, D.C. that have come, like the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Travel and Tourism, Alex Lasry, who I have the privilege of working with because I sit on the National Travel and Tourism Advisory Board. He was one of our speakers. And then all our major government leaders are there also sharing their mana'o with us, from Governor Green to the chairs of the Tourism Senate Committee and the House Tourism Committee, the Senate Ways and Means Committee chair, and the presumed next Speaker of the House is also there.
Well, let's talk about the state of tourism right now, what we're seeing with some of the numbers, obviously a year out after what's happened on the island of Maui and just the impact that it had not only to the island of Maui, but to the state as a whole. What are we seeing with some of the data that we've seen over this last year?
Well, obviously, I like to talk in the context of it was not just the Maui wildfires, but we were also reeling coming back from the pandemic. And the Maui wildfires just exacerbated that situation. So the numbers are soft. Maui is about 25% down from what it used to be. Maui is the most dependent county on travel and tourism. So we're not content to sit back and sort of hope that things get better. We actually have a proactive plan that starts first with our messaging, that Maui is indeed open and welcomes visitors back. Very, very pleased that Mayor Richard Bisson and Governor Josh Green went with us on what we call a saturation mission of Southern California, our most important and largest domestic market, where we were there making it very clear to the folks in Southern California that we want them to come back. And we were joined by a host of private sector. The industry was there in force. So the state put up $1.5 million. The industry came in and put in like a 3-to-1 over what we put in there. So they were really behind this mission that we had there, and making it clear to all our partners that Maui is open and we want them to come back. And we also saw perhaps some new opportunities going forward. The Los Angeles Rams is very excited of having an opportunity to come back regularly in some form or fashion. And we're interested in hearing that proposal out. So it was a great trip. And it was also a way for Governor Green to say to the Los Angeles Rams on behalf of 11 sports franchises in LA, thank you very much for contributing $450,000 to Maui when the wildfires occurred.
You're talking about not an insignificant amount of money to saturate that market. How do you measure return on investment for something like that? Why is that money well spent?
That money is well spent because, when you do bookings, and booking pays and so forth, it takes a while. So even though we went in September, you're not going to see immediate results. But there is hope, there's optimism, and the fact that while on that trip, the messaging now that we have is the people, the place, and our unique culture that will bring you back here. What the private sector does is that they overlay that with incentives. So, for example, they're saying, hey, now we've come to Maui for 3 nights, and you get the 4th night free. Those kind of things will go a long way to help us entice people to come back, that it's a value destination, a brand destination, but we're also trying to make it every which way possible and feasible for you to afford to come back.
In talking about that in your travels here, one of the things that was highlighted here and we covered was the Aloha Market that happened in Venice Beach, California. Over 10,000 people attending and shopping with Hawaii products over the course of a weekend, really helping to signify the strength of the brand of Hawaii. Are these types of events and pop-ups that we saw something that HTA can get behind and we can expect to see more of in the future?
Oh, absolutely. Let's take LA, for example. There were 60 businesses, travel industry businesses that were there, from hotels, attractions, all promoting that they need to come back and helping us get that message out. And then there were 40 pop-up businesses, I should say pop-up, Hawaii businesses that were there at the Mana Marketplace. That's 40. And you said 10,000, they were actually expecting 5,000. So this is a proven winner. When we can have that accompany our marketing missions and the like, where small businesses from Hawaii are actually seeing that they're going to generate revenues, they're going to make money, and they're also going to amplify the message that we want. When you come to Hawaii, shop local, eat local, buy local, and be local. Goes a long, long way.
Tell me about when we look at the numbers, they seem fairly flat right now. We know that there's improvement over last year, but that, of course, is measured against the wildfire numbers, and we saw a significant drop.
Or the 2019 numbers.
Right.
Yes.
And so when we look at the numbers, who's coming here and who's not? Who are we still missing?
Well, we're still missing that traveler that'll come here and stay for a longer period of time. We're still missing the traveler that will come here and stay at our hotels or our resorts. They've gone through tremendous sacrifice through the years. During the pandemic, many of them had to keep their workers employed, maintain their medical and health benefits. And then during the wildfires, they were contributing to help the emergency workers that had to come here. They had to house them or within their own properties to take care of their families, take care of the ohana so that those who lost their homes had a place to stay. So we want to get that visitor that's going to come here. It's going to stay for a significant number of days and then also has the ability to spend money so that it generates and flows throughout the economy.
Another headline over the last few weeks in the tourism industry has, of course, been the merger between Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines. There have been a lot of coverage, obviously, about what this process has been like for these two entities coming together. Your thoughts from the tourism aspect, some of the benefits, some of the things you're concerned about, maybe some things that you're looking for as this new merger kind of begins to move forward.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Hawaiian Airlines. I still say one of their best ads they should have used it was, "Our spirit is unique. We are Hawaiian." And so I'm going to miss that aspect of it. But, let's be real. Let's look at this pragmatically. And I don't think Hawaiian Airlines could have survived going forward had there not been some kind of merger, if you will, or acquisition by another airline. To me, because Alaska Airlines has had a track record of operating here, it's like, this is a new airline coming here. We do know that they have tried to do things that we've asked of them, and this merger hopefully will keep the best of what Hawaiian did, but then there's an opportunity now to have more routes, both domestically, internationally. We're also impressed upon them. You got to keep those miles of Hawaiian Air intact there, because we saw what happened when Aloha Airlines went away. Those miles disappeared. And the way that Hawaiian Airlines has worked very closely with the travel and tourism industry. They were very active with us in Los Angeles. They were very active with us in Tokyo. I've been assured in talking with Joe Sprague, the new president CEO, that they're going to maintain that tradition and the commitment that Hawaiian Airlines has done through the years.
Yeah, the thing about Hawaiian, that brand, is that your vacation basically starts the moment you get on the airplane, and I think that that's something that visitors have come to expect.
Exactly. And so I think because we have seen them operate here, and then we have some other ideas for them. Yeah, I've got a lot of ohana and relatives in Samoa, for example, and they've got to also look upon what a Hawaiian did in the past that was good, and then build upon that to ensure that there's that commitment there because of the families that go back and forth.
Let me ask you a little bit about what's been in the news, and that has been the strikes of the hotel workers. We know that there have been strikes, of course, in the medical field as well with the nurses at Kapiolani Medical Center, and we do see continued strikes of hotel workers. What are your thoughts about the dissension that's happening
Well,
there?
we live in a state where we respect the rights of workers, labor, to come to the table. And when you have these situations that occur where they have to go through and contemplate a new agreement, what have you, they should be there. They should be able to say what they need to say and also try to make a case to the owners. On the other hand, we also try to recognize the fact that, the owners have gone through their share of sacrifices and what they made and so forth. So there has to be a common ground, a sweet spot. So we're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that the settlement occurs sooner rather than later, because we're seeing now other industries are contemplating strikes or have gone on strike. So this is not a situation you want to be, but this is how I look at it. I got to take the glasses half full approach, and that is our number one economic driver is tourism. So whereas there may be a hotel or two that may be affected by this, we still have a lot of people that still need us to continue to go forward, open up Hawaii, because there's no other industry that brings in $20 billion a year, creates over 200,000 jobs, and brings in $2.4 billion in taxes when you take all the taxes that the visitors pay when they come here. And if we don't do that, it'll hurt all the other things that the state has looked to our funding base through the years. They use that money for schools, for parks, for roads, what have you. So we need to keep this economic driver going. In the meantime, those hotels that may be affected by the strikes, we're saying that we know they're doing their level best to maintain as much services as they can in these times. And also that there are alternative hotels that may not be affected by the strike. We try to divert them to have their special vacation in Hawaii.
I want to talk a little bit more about HTA as a whole. Since you've come on board as chair, there have been some changes and just the overall temperature of the future of HTA moving forward. Again, remember, just looking at the past over the last few years, I mean, this is an organization that was struggling to get funding, and we didn't know what the future looked like for HTA. At this point in time, leading this organization of HTA, where do you think you guys stand right now comparatively to what we saw in the past, and just looking forward, what are some of the things that you're going to be advocating for in this upcoming legislative session?
Well, that's a very good question. We have very hardworking board members. We all work voluntarily. We don't get paid for it. Some people think that we're employed by HTA. We're not. We have a dedicated, hardworking staff that works there in good times, bad times, what have you. So when I was asked by the governor to go on the board in August, and when I became chair in December, my thought was this, and that is, I want to change that mindset that you alluded to, that HTA too often in people's minds stands for Hawaii Tourism Afterthought. I want it to be the Hawaii Tourism Authority. So we have had significant strides that have been made from the beginning. 2 years of being defunded by the legislature was replaced this past session by $63 million. We went from 0 to 63. No more talk now of abolishing HTA. Destination management has been codified in terms of what we do, along with destination marketing. We also were able to get a significant increase to hire a permanent president and CEO, to hire a permanent brand marketing chief, and also we got additional funding for the convention center to fix the rooftop. So we've come a long way, but I'm not satisfied. I really think we need more. But I'm very, very pleased that there's a newfound respect for HTA, whether it's in government, whether it's in the community, whether it's in private industry, and there's been a sense of we're really reinvigorated in terms of going forward and doing the things that we want to do to help us get through this Maui crisis and put us on a better footing going forward.
So when you talk about wanting more, we're at 63 million now. You're hoping to get to 80 million
Yes.
After the next legislative session. What is the case to lawmakers? Why is that a good, because when all of this, what Ryan alluded to, when all of this back and forth was happening, there was this sense that we don't need to advertise. Hawaii markets itself. Hawaii is, its own destination. And so tell us what the pitch is to lawmakers to maintain the 63 and raise it to 80.
Well, I was very, very pleased, and this is the way we're going to roll going forward. Every major tourism trip that we do, we're going to have elected officials be a part of it. The last time there was that kind of focus was in 2009 when I was mayor. So on this trip here to LA, governor and a mayor. And the trip to Tokyo, we had 6 legislative leaders there. And doing these trips, we have an opportunity to talk story. And my basic question is this: if not tourism, then what? Because you need the tourism dollars to fund the other things you need to do. And if you're still talking about economic diversification, it's the money from tourism that's going to help spur those efforts along. So I really believe we have an excellent case to be made. And let's remember, we are still in a crisis mode. We are still in an emergency mode. So we have to spend some to get some. So I feel that the 80 million is not a difficult ask because we can justify it. And more importantly, HTA in the past used to get 80, 90, 95 million. That was common. And it went away. And so, as I said, now I want to get back to that so that we can do all the things that we feel we need to do. And most importantly, we're listening. We're listening very carefully what government would like for us to do, what private industry would like for us to do, and at the end of the day, what the community. And they love the marketplace. They love the fact now they're part of it. One of the things that I'm seeing at the tourism conference is it's not just high-level government officials or experts there. I'm seeing people from neighborhood boards. I'm seeing people from community associations that are there, from the so-called hotspots like the North Shore, all saying, wow, this is different, this is new. We like the fact that we can have a say in how tourism benefits us in our community. That's the way I want to roll going forward. And the other emphasis that I want to make is also workforce development. We need to make people understand that this is an industry that can still provide great jobs and a great future. I want to help folks that want to restore what UH Travel Industry Management School used to be. We used to be the top university in the country, in the world. We've lost that edge. I think we can help regain it if we know that we have a laser-like focus on workforce development. We have a program now that's funded, started funding by HTA, thanks to Senator Donovan de la Cruz. Now it's going to be funded by Department of Labor, that provides full 4-year scholarships for students graduating from public high schools to get room and board and their degree from our travel industry management school here at Scheidler.
Well, let's talk a little bit also about one of the voices you mentioned was the community voice. And one of the things that the community has spoken up against was some of the illegal vacation rentals that we saw. We're seeing a crackdown by counties throughout the state, really trying to target and keep tourists in these tourist destinations and zones. Up until this point, what have you noticed with some of this new changes being happening in this industry, and if you're seeing any significant difference in that?
I want to give props to all the mayors of the county. I know what it's like being a mayor, and it's an issue that they have also said, you know what, enough is enough, and they want to really tackle what I call illegal vacation rentals. My position has always been this, whether I was in office, out of office, where I am now. Let them reside in areas where they can compete with us and pay all the taxes and fees that the accommodations do. And that should be in resort designated areas. But where we are very concerned about is when they start having new approvals or permits to go into residential areas. We really think we need to keep them out, because that's where local people, hardworking class people, are able to afford to rent and maybe possibly to own their own home. So I like what has occurred. I think it's still a little more time that needs to come about, but there's no question that this is going to be a good pathway forward in terms of the crackdown in illegal vacation rentals. If you exist, come and compete with us and survive and go through the struggles that we do in these areas where visitors are supposed to go and stay, which is in these designated zoned areas for accommodations for the visitors.
As you know, we always invite the audience to ask questions, and thank you for those of you who are writing into our Facebook page now. And there's some interesting comments that I'd like you to respond to, because I think that it's an argument that I've heard you make before, and just a thread that I'd like you to weave for this viewer, Kalani, who's saying, he said, got to spend some to get some $80 million, and kind of saying, I don't know if that's, that seems like a large investment, saying Hawaii should really focus on farmers and ranchers. How do you see all of that coming together?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thank you, Kalani, for asking that question. That speaks to our regenerative tourism model. Where we want to have a tourism industry that benefits other industries, other businesses, if you will. And the Mana'ap pop-up marketplace that we stood up in Venice is an example of that, of local businesses coming forward, whether they come from agriculture, whether they come from fashion, whether they come from the innovative creative industry, they can benefit, because our desire is to have an industry that promotes all of Hawaii businesses. And if it's not only local residents that they are looking for help in Kukui'in, now we've got an industry that can help you. And ag tourism is a very big part of it. That's a major topic that's taking place at our conference. We really believe in the agricultural industry. There's a value-added product initiative going now. I'm all for that because it creates more agricultural entrepreneurship in those areas. We just funded an apprenticeship program for chefs, local chefs, to be the next Sam Choi, the next Roy Yamaguchi, what have you. They're going to be able to get their Culinary Institute of America certification here at Hawaii at the Culinary Institute of the Pacific as opposed to going to the mainland. So we really believe that agriculture and tourism go hand in hand.
You know, we want to head into. Well, I just want to ask before we leave here, but as we look down the calendar here, we're a few months away from the legislative session, and Governor Green will be entering his third legislative session as the governor.
Oh, I know this question now.
You know, for the last two sessions, he has tried but failed to pass some sort of green fee. What he claims is necessary to sort of combat climate change as well as the impact that visitors have in our state. There's been a lot of pushback from the tourism officials that we've had on the show in this engaging conversation. What do you think, or have there been any conversations about this coming up again this session? And has the governor reached out to find any sort of compromise during this time?
You know, I want to say first that we're very appreciative of all the support the governor has given us. You know, when the industry was defunded again, he came through and helped. On this saturation mission of LA, we could not have done it without governor's participation and the First Lady and Mayor Richard Biston of Maui. So he's done a lot. So he's well aware of the position that we've taken, and that is there has to be a nexus back to the industry. So far, we haven't seen that clear nexus. But the good thing about it is that there's discussions taking place. I'm involved in some of those discussions, trying to find, is there a nexus? Does it make sense? How does it benefit us so that if a visitor comes and has to pay more for something, they're going to see that it's actually going to that specific purpose. The Hanama Bay model that I championed when I was a city council member is the model that should be for everything that we do here. In other words, there's an impact user fee. A fee is paid, and it goes back to that. So if we can see that nexus, I think that there could be opportunities to revisit what has happened in the past. I'm always about looking forward rather than the past, and so Governor has been a strong supporter of tourism. So I'm trying to see how we can sort of come to some kind of middle ground to address his needs, but at the same time for the visit industry to say, we did the TAT, we were promised X amount. Now we went from this much down all the way here where it was at zero. If we can have a win-win there that could perhaps be able to move that forward, we're all ears. And certainly I'd like to see something happen.
I want to ask you just before you go, this is, we're almost out of time, but you know, what Kalani's question and some of the other comments I'm seeing, there is still, some in our community still have a reticence to welcoming so many people to our shores. What is, you know, for the layperson who may not work in the tourism industry, why is tourism good for them? Why is it good for Hawaii?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say to anyone who thinks that there's still too many people, know that we are actively engaged what we call a destination management action plans that is designed to have people at the county level, at the local level, weigh in and tell us how they want it. So we've had some projects that have been very successful. Hana Road, for example, is something that we worked with the community. It came from them, and HTA stood up a pilot project that now is going to go forward with county support. So that's my first question. Number one, there's a process for you to share your manao. Number two is we are all about making sure that if the community doesn't feel that tourism is going to benefit them, then poho. So we really want to make sure that whatever we do not only benefits visitors, but also benefits residents. And then I would also say this, if not tourism, what is that industry that's going to do things outside of the tourism industry to help with your schools, to help with your roads, to help with your beach parks, what have you? It's tourism.
Okay.
Well, Mufi, thank you. We know that you are very busy. You're going to head back, I'm sure, to the convention center where they're wrapping up, or they continue on in the Hawaii Tourism Conference. So thank you so much for taking a break and joining us here. And we look forward to more conversations and updates in the months to come.
Well,
Thanks so much.
thank you for the partnership, and we look forward to more discussions.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome back to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. We are continuing on in our conversation about tourism here in our islands. And we want to thank all of you who are tuning in and already typing in your questions in our Facebook section. It has become an engaging conversation. So we'd always love to see your comments and thoughts. If you would also like to get involved in the conversation, you can always scan this QR code that you also see at the bottom of your screen.
And welcoming in now, we have the HTA Chief Stewardship Officer, Kanani Ka'ana'ana. I got that right?
Yes.
So Kalani, tell us, kind of building on what Mufi was talking about and really making the case as to why tourism is actually a good thing for Hawaii. We have changed the model to one that felt very extractive to one that tries to be more regenerative. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think at a fundamental level, I think part of our work is to educate our residents of the value of tourism to each of our quality of life. I often speak in community and I'm hearing from residents directly their concerns about tourism, but I often have to push back. 81 cents of every dollar that's spent by a visitor stays in Hawaii somehow. And so I think it's important that when we hear those narratives about extractive and exploitative sort of industry, we really have to take a hard look at it and look at the data. And so 81 cents stays home. I think it's also that we don't dismiss that completely, but we also look at how we move forward. And so how do we think about a regenerative tourism model? What does that look like? How can practices and systems change to get benefits that we want to see as residents?
When you're looking at just how you communicate the message of Hawaii to visitors, oftentimes, in the past, it's taken on this very surf, sand, sun, this very, at times, maybe plastic version of what Hawaii was known. How difficult is it to maybe shift the narrative now to something completely different, to maybe engage visitors in more of an interactive experience, to integrate the culture? What has that transition been like?
Yeah, I think for us, it's been deeper storytelling. It's going beyond the sun, sand, and surf and really telling more compelling narratives. And so I think if you look at our work, even from 2018 and the Hawaii Rooted campaign and other campaigns that we've done since that time, we've really tried to go beyond that. But what we can't lose is really the perspective that these messages are a way to educate our visitors before they arrive, help them to understand what their kuleana is when they do visit, but we can't lose sight that we are inviting people to come and visit. And so we have to be relatable and we have to help them understand what assets and product exist here. And so how do we do and find that balance has kind of been the journey we've been on.
There is this perception that people don't want tourists, but your research shows otherwise. Tell us about that.
So we've done a resident sentiment survey for over 40 years, and it's something that we'll continue to do because it helps us keep a pulse on what people are feeling. A majority of residents still feel that tourism brings more benefits than problems, and I think that that's something that gets lost in the narrative. We know that 212,000 jobs are supported by tourism in our state. That's roughly a quarter of the state's workforce. And so how do we make sure that that's being communicated and that narrative is also being shared? While not dismissing some people who have challenges with tourism, part of the reason why my position was created and why the legislature gave us 5 new destination manager positions and codified destination management was because we recognize the challenges that are before us. And so we know we have work to do, but we cannot just simply say, no more, because there's nothing else to replace it. And so sometimes I also have to talk to residents and say, okay, you don't want visitors, or you only want X amount of visitors, finish that paragraph. What is the next part of that sentence, or what's the next sentence in that paragraph?
One of the other challenges that you've had to deal with overcoming, of course, is what's happened on Maui and just the message that went out in the initial days of people asking people not to come, not only to Maui, but in some regards, don't come to the state of Hawaii. Yeah. And there are some who continue to live in the area of Maui affected that maybe aren't ready for tourism to the degree that we've seen it in the past. Again, with that whole balance conversation specifically to Maui, how are you communicating that to visitors who may be a little hesitant to return to Hawaii or Maui?
At the end of the day, we always encourage our visitors, regardless of what happened, and especially so after the wildfires, was how can they be respectful? How can they recognize that they're coming to somebody's home? And again, when you think about that and make it personal for them and help them really truly have empathy and compassion for what happened, that changes behavior. And so that had always sort of been at the forefront of our mind is how do we educate them about how to be respectful and responsible when they're in the destination. Sure, you can come, you can enjoy, you can be respectful, but there's a how that's done. And that's where our messaging and our visitor education programs that really start pre-arrival, when they're in that top end of the funnel and they're considering a destination, we follow it right through and say confirmation emails emails with our hotel partners and airline partners. It's in flight on the airplanes. There's only one airline that doesn't carry our videos, but everyone else does. And then also we follow that through with airport messaging, in-room messaging, and a bunch of social while they're in destination.
And what's interesting too, and I've heard Mufi speak about this and you as well, that the visitors want something different, that they are not necessarily also satisfied by sun, sand, and surf, that they want to maybe get out and do some service work. And tell us a little bit about how you've integrated that into the visitor experience and how that's being received.
Yeah, again, at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we're always trying to be a data-driven organization. And so we look at many sources. But what we consistently are hearing, whether it's Skift, whether it's OmniTrack, whether it's so many of these people who are studying, looking at it from an academic standpoint, surveys, et cetera, visitors want deeper, more meaningful experiences. They want unique experiences. They want to buy local. They want to be sustainable. But some of them find challenges in being able to do it. And so we know that there's a desire. We know that many visitors will also pay more for these regenerative experiences or more sustainable practices. And so really, I think, maybe just in the hotel space, it used to be like, oh, what's the mattress like? What's the Wi-Fi? Like, what are the amenities that are there? And now visitors are starting to say, well, like, do you use single plastic amenity bottles? Are you using like low filter or low flow toilets? Are you using LED bulbs? And so the visitor demands are also changing.
I want to ask you about the Native Hawaiian voice and the role that Native Hawaiians are seemingly now playing in the tourism industry. There seems to have been a awakening, if you will, by those in the hospitality industry to really engage Native Hawaiian and the Native Hawaiian voice. And we're seeing it at top management level with several leaders of Native Hawaiian descent helping to lead these organizations. What has been your interaction as a Native Hawaiian and being involved in this industry and having to find that balance and those hard conversations sometimes with other Native Hawaiians who maybe see tourism as a threat?
Yeah. I'll start by saying maybe a little bit of a personal experience. When I took the job at HTA in the beginning as a director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs, I probably got called everything under the sun, sorcerer, traitor, sellout, you name it. I was criticized for joining this industry. What I really got involved with HTA was I grew up in Kailua. And tourism and visitors were always an important part of our business community, but they also were like riding bikes and blocking the road and, so many things. And so I said, I don't want to just be a part of like the people namu namu, they're, complaining and chatting on the side. And I said, I want to be in the room. I want to help make solutions. And that's how I got into this industry. Now, you fast forward the 8 years that I've been at HTA, that change that we've seen in Hawaiian leadership emerge really was one that was preceded by 20, 30, 40 years of advocacy. But what I think is important for us as Hawaiian leaders in this industry is to recognize that we're not alone. We're an island community, right? Whether you're Filipino, Japanese, Portuguese, whatever, Haole, whatever it is, we do this together. And this industry was built with all of us working together. And so we can't ever lose sight that Hawaii is a multicultural place and that we all grew up here. And as local people, as Kama'aina, that we can't lose that.
Yeah, and what do you say to the folks that Ryan is referencing who really have an aversion to this industry about why this is still a good thing for Hawaii?
Yeah, I think my invitation is to dialogue with us, engage with us. I think so many people just dismiss tourism just right off the bat before they even take a moment to even understand, learn, and engage us. And so my invitation is engage this industry, learn about it, understand it, and then help us get better.
What are some new things that maybe you're hoping to bring to the table as we continue in this transition of how Hawaii is being marketed? But beyond that, are there any other destinations, groups of people, different types of events that maybe you are now considering that maybe weren't in the past to do tourism a little differently?
Yeah, maybe I'll point to our destination management action plans and the DMAP process. Again, for us, DMAPs was a really important way for us to respond to the pandemic. It was about building and strengthening relationships with community, giving community a greater voice. In that resident sentiment survey I mentioned, resident voice in tourism decision-making was one of the key drivers in improving resident sentiment for tourism. And so the DMAP process about listening to our communities was really, I think, the foundation of how we're going to move forward. And so if we think about community-led and government-supported tourism and how we sort of take these lessons from places like Ha'ena as a model of how we can really make a significant change is important. I also think, though, that fundamentally, if we're going to do this differently, it means that we're going to have to be gentle. Because as we change things, it creates loss for some. And so we have to manage that loss. And so as this process goes on and the changes occur over a long period of time, we just need to be mindful of that. And then I think also Another example, we partnered with community-based nonprofits in Hana. On the road to Hana has been a hot spot for decades. Everybody knows it, right? People blocking a road, stopping to take a photo of a waterfall, and making hard time, right? People cannot get to and from work. Emergency vehicles can't get in and out. We partnered with 3 community-based nonprofits, supported them with technical support and capacity building programming. Now they're out there managing tourism frontline, creating jobs for residents in East Maui. Now they don't need to drive out to Kahului. Those are the kind of ways that we can find these really creative solutions where tourism can be managed and done well, and then we can still obviously improve the quality of life for our Kama'aina.
You know, what's interesting when you bring up that example is we had one of those leaders on here, and she was talking about how it also enhances the visitor experience,
Absolutely.
right? Because when you go somewhere, you want to actually speak to someone who lives there who says, don't go to this beach, that one's better, right? And so really getting the community involved in that way is really powerful, is meaning to her, but it's also a bonus for the visitor.
Absolutely. We had another pilot project that we did with the Department of Land and Natural Resources out at Ka'ana'ana. And again, we put a guide essentially at the trailhead at Ka'ana'ana at the very beginning. And they were saying like, hey, visitor, you don't have shoes, you don't have water, whatever it may be. And it improves that visitor experience. They learned about the native plants and animals that are out there in Ka'ana'ana and how special it is. And so I think it brings a certain level of awareness to folks because we can't reach everybody all the time. And so having our residents have jobs in educating visitors on the locations that they're at is a really unique, well, it's not unique. Maybe it's an important way that we can manage tourism better.
I want to ask you this because I did ask Mufi, the same question, but just with your role and the time that you spent here at HTA, how have you seen things change? Because there was a moment a few years back where we didn't know if this organization would exist, if the legislature was not, chose not to fund it. The governor didn't step in to provide those allocation funds out of his budget for this. How have things changed, or have they?
Yeah. I think fundamentally for me, what I've seen, and particularly this year, as we started our Hawaii Tourism Conference, the energy is different. I think some of that is lifted. There aren't those conversations about absorbing us into DBED. We're not looking at defunding HTA. And so I think now we're able to actually focus on the HANA. We're able to focus on the work ahead of us and making sure that we can continue to deliver for our residents. $2.4 billion in tax revenue helps pay the bills for the state. And so for us as staff, we're focused on how do we continue to make sure that this industry and the partnerships that we have, not only with tourism businesses, but our local community and residents, and bringing that all together is really the focus. And so now not to be distracted with some of that, quite frankly, as a staff member, is a really important thing for us because now we can get back to the business of what we do.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you were saying about, that conversation that you have with residents. If not this, then what? Mm-hmm. And when you are engaging in that way, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I'll be direct. Most don't have a good suggestion for what's next. What I also then like to share is that tourism can be a catalyst. Tourism can support agriculture. Tourism can support other industries in our state that we're looking to invest in. And again, we always have an opportunity in educating the visitor to encourage them to buy local, encourage them to shop local, and get to places where their dollar has more impact in a positive way, right? And so I think for us, if we can be catalytic and a farm tour can help add value-added ag products where the real money is, right? So for farming has a bunch of different ways to make money, but value-added ag products is one of them. And I think that's why you see folks like Senator Donovan De La Cruz investing in a value-added ag facility. Those kind of synergies between tourism and our other industries that we're investing in are an important sort of answer to the if not what next question.
You mentioned the senator's name, and we talked with Mufi about the upcoming legislative session. What is your case to lawmakers on why HTA is important and why maybe more money and funds are needed to help, expand some of the initiatives that you're looking to do?
Yeah, I'll go back to our sort of mission. We're here to strategically manage tourism for the state of Hawaii. And that means we have to market the destination. We have to protect the Hawaiian Islands brand. We have to continue to create travel demand to the Hawaiian Islands that supports 212,000 jobs, generates $2.4 billion in tax revenue to the state, and over $20 billion in spending by visitors. We also then have to think about the holistic management of the destination and how do we manage the impacts of visitors at our home. And so that's another important part, or maybe the other half of that coin or the other side of that coin that we have to do. And so my case to legislators is we're the state's only entity who has a primary focus on tourism, and it's our job to do so, and we're going to do it. And we're going to be the authority that Chair Hannemann mentioned, because we can bring not only community partners together, our industry, but also government, and all levels of government, federal, state, and county. And so our convening sort of power, it's an informal soft power, but our ability to convene is a really important one. And so events like the Hawaii Tourism Conference that are happening now are an important way that these dialogue happens, these connections happen, to make sure that we can find the solutions that make this industry sustainable for the long term.
I think that's a wonderful way to end our conversation this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to be right back. We have another tourism expert joining us on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
What is Hawaii's soul?
It's the way we exist with all living things. The aina, the ocean, the sky, the kanaka, who originated from the islands.
And everyone who calls Hawaii home.
It's all of us living with island consciousness.
It's understanding that the past is in front of us so that everyone can follow the kupuna
that came before us.
It's our shared kuleana to take care of these islands.
And each other, because we belong to Hawaii.
We are Go Hawaii.
A discussion with the two candidates who want to be Hawaii County's next mayor.
Mayor Mitch Roth and Dr. Kimo Alameda will take our questions and yours. Scan the QR code to submit your questions.
Watch this special edition of Spotlight Now.
And that mayoral discussion that we're going to have with the candidates for Big Island Mayor coming up in just a few weeks.
Yeah, October 15th, 1 o'clock, right at this time. Please send in your questions. Let's get back to the conversation we're having today, though, focusing on Hawaii's #1 economic driver. That, of course, is tourism. Keith Vieira is here, principal at KV and Associates, a hospitality consultant. Keith, let's talk about what we started talking about with Mufi, and that is the numbers. We are seeing a soft market. Who are we missing, and what does that tell you about what's to come?
Well, there's a number of things going on at once. On Japan, you have the situation primarily with the weakness of the yen versus the U.S. dollar that's slowing down travel. But everywhere we're at right now, globally, it's the narrative that's the challenge. People are not sure they're welcome. They're not sure if they do come, is it appropriate to celebrate? Most of that is tied to Maui, but people geographically don't really understand some of that. So the warm, aloha, welcoming message that we're famous for is not really out there.
And as someone who has worked in this industry for some time now, you've seen the various evolutions of how this industry has changed and has evolved. With where we're at right now, what do you think the state of tourism is? Are we heading in the right direction, or what things need to change, or would you like to see that would help those who work and live off this industry?
In the mid-'90s, Governor Ka'ana'ana at the time recognized that Hawaii cannot be going to the legislature every year, the tourism industry, asking for funds to do things. There has to be dedicated funding, and that came out of their economic council, and that's why the TAT was done, to fund tourism marketing and to fund the convention center. It made a lot of sense. We fought it a little bit at the time because we didn't want another charge to tourists, but it was the right thing to do. And so that money gave us funding that we could go out and sign the Pro Bowl for 5 years. We could do a lot of things, showing up in LA not just once a year, but doing it on a regular basis, et cetera. So the funding was there. And what government officials sometimes forget is industry comes in at about 6 times that level. So, back in the day when we would do the Los Angeles Times, HVCB would buy 2 pages of beautiful beaches of Hawaii, and then industry would buy 6 pages of come to our hotel or visit our place. And that made a lot of sense because we were all in it together. Well, the pandemic happened. There was no marketing funding, which actually is the #1 challenge, is that we're not marketing out there. That really changed things. And also it was a time that Native Hawaiian voices were growing stronger on questioning things. And it became nice to go to the beach at Kailua Beach, and there were no visitors there. But there wasn't the recognition, at least you've seen on the media, about what it was doing to our economy and then how do we impact our future. I mean, every time somebody says, oh, maybe less tourists, nobody has ever said one thing that's viable that could replace tourism at its magnitude or support that would be allowed change over time. So I think there are some movies and the team has done a good job in growing back what HTA is doing. We certainly haven't turned the corner. Maui is a unique situation, so I think things are on the right track, but we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, and in the meantime, what are your concerns for the holiday season and beyond?
Well, the holiday season, traditionally we call festive, was always the busiest time of the year. And the strongest from hotel standpoint, the strongest rates from restaurants, the reservations were full. So it really was kind of a bellwether of what we're going to be able to do throughout the year. And we're open this year. It's a little bit better than last year because it was very close to the Maui fires. But we're open, and that's scary.
Yeah, it's scary in what way? What are you most concerned about?
Hawaii is a very large, pure leisure destination. I mean, we do have some group, but basically there's no business travel of any significance. So we have to rely on the leisure traveler. And the leisure traveler typically takes somewhere between 2 to 6 months, depending how far you're coming from, West Coast short time and East and international longer. So we look at advanced bookings and we're able to say, okay, this looks good, we can manage this, we can plan these activities. Right now, the advanced bookings are really bad. We're negative numbers even from as far back as 19 and 18. So we're not going to have a good year next year unless that changes. And it only can change through marketing dollars.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I mean, how does one make that change? And I guess the case overall that Hawaii continues to be a desirable destination, knowing that many people have maybe already come here. You know, you have to almost try to resell the repeat visit back to the islands. What are some of the key elements you think in the marketing of the state?
Well, the repeater comes back 9 times. So, and you know, it's your stages in life. You came with your buddies on high school graduation, you came back for your honeymoon, you come back for your family reunion, and as that goes forward, you spend more money every time. That's the visitor we want, who spends more money in the community and around the community. So that's important. But as we go forward, unless you're continually reminding people, because in the old days we relied on the wholesalers and they bought these, you know, Sunday sections, etc. Today, anybody can be on the internet. Destinations you never heard of can easily be marketing on the internet. So we have to be there too. We have to be there with positive social media stories. We have to talk about all the unique and things to do and how much Aloha Spirit is important to us. Because what you'll hear continually, and I remember sitting in a focus group once, and people will say, there's beautiful beaches elsewhere. There's you know, beautiful ocean elsewhere, beautiful skies, beautiful weather, but no one else has the Aloha Spirit. So we have got to get that message about the strength of our Aloha brand into the marketplace.
Yeah, and are you seeing that messaging and alignment? Because we know that after Maui, there was the Malama Maui campaign, and now it's Maukau, I believe, is what the new campaign. Yeah, to try to get everybody like, we're ready for tourists, we're ready for you to come back. Has that permeated through?
No, it hasn't, because it's from a social media standpoint, it's just not that exciting to talk about it. I mean, you know, when you look back, what influenced tourism here? Look at the movies. Look at Elvis Presley in Blue Hawaii. Look at Hawaii Five-0. Look at the stories that came out. We used to oversee the hotel in Princeville, and every time Princeville would rain heavily, the river would block off the road, and on average, 50 people a night couldn't get back to the hotel. Every one of those 50 people stayed in somebody's home. And they all would write stories about how they found us and we couldn't cross the river and we invited him, and you know, amazing stories. And then even growing up here, when we were growing up, if somebody was going to come and visit us, they moved into my parents' bedroom, my parents moved into our room, and we slept in the garage. That's what you did for visitors. It was all about that, ho'okipa, and how we take care of our visitors, and that permeated. And it permeated with other ethnicities as they came in to be workers, Filipinos, Chinese, whatever, Portuguese, and that was an important part of our background. Now people are challenging some of that, you know. I grew up native Hawaiian, but we were just locals. Chinese friends, Japanese friends, it was just locals. All of a sudden now, the native Hawaiian term has become a bit exclusionary. There's some good in that because we have to make sure we're doing the right things, but there also is, it kind of doesn't match with Hawaii's inclusiveness.
I want to also just, plainly ask, I mean, has it become too costly to come to Hawaii? Has cost become a determining factor where people are now looking at other destinations, maybe where it's not as expensive? Or do you think Hawaii still is desirable based on our price point?
It's a very good point. I was surprised. Last week we had the Maui mayor, and he met with Jack Richards, who's the CEO of Pleasant Holidays up in California. And Jack was talking about they sell the world. Their average rate that they pay around the world was twice what it was 4 years ago. So Hawaii is an expensive destination, but so are many other places. What's key for us is value. We have to find value, and value comes from the Shave Ice store. Value comes from, going to Kailua Beach at sunset and walking down and just being amazed at how beautiful things are. So we've got to create those value scenarios. And a lot of the packages out there right now, buy 5, get night 6 night free, and different things people are doing help create value. But we'll never be a cheap destination. But we have to give people the value that's there.
Now, you talked about what you called festive this holiday season and how weak it is and what that bodes for the next year. When do you think we can get out of this? What is the trajectory for improvement?
I think none of us thought things would have taken this long, and I'm more referring to the pandemic. We thought because the people were coming back with revenge travel or whatever people want to call it, and the Maui fires was we've been through tough times before. We've been through Hurricane Iniki, Eva, et cetera, but the Maui fires was a different situation. I mean, the losses, life and on. So it put a special emphasis on do the right thing, say the right thing, be very careful. And I saw that in the mayor's eyes when we were on this trip. It's just so hard knowing what he knows about what his island went through. So we expected it to take time. I think what's a little concerning for me is that it's affected the whole state, again, not just Maui. So we're looking for when does that start to turn. We were thinking that post August 8th, and now a year behind, and henceforth Mufi suggesting the trip to LA. But when you go to LA and you spend $1.5 million, it should have been $10.5 million. In order to make a difference. We should have been in South Coast Plaza and had fashion shows. We should have, one of the neatest things was Amy Hanai came with us to our hotel as part of Hawaiian Air doing something, and she just got up in the lobby and sang for an hour, and people were just, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's Hawaii. That's the memories that create why people come to Hawaii. So I think we have to do more of that.
Well, another thing that was brought up in the conversation is workforce, of course, and this is kind of a broad question with what we're seeing, of course, with the very striking the unions going on strike with workers, but also to Mufi's point of just creating a pipeline for more local people to be able to fill some of these industry jobs. Is there a concern about the workforce and the overall demands that this market may have and our ability as a state to really supply them with workers that are qualified?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of scary in looking going forward. For one thing, Maui has been so depressed on the number of workers needed for hotels, restaurants, and the places that have closed, that when things start picking up, do we have the workers that will be able to come back? In a lot of cases, it's not your long-term workers that have survived and what they've gone through and want to come back to work. But a lot of younger people are saying, I'm just going someplace else. I can't wait this out, or I don't know if I can afford it. So that is a real concern. But statewide, we also have an issue with a significantly aging workforce and an immigrant population that we had that was more, from the time it was always hard work to now more South Pacific Islanders, where we're going to have to look at how can we integrate them in. But most importantly is that our local students can understand that they can get into the industry either through directly coming in after high school or becoming a manager through KCC or the TIM program at the University of Hawaii. We want those future leaders. That's who you cannot give Aloha Spirit unless you have people like that in your hotels, and we want them to understand that there are many opportunities for them.
Okay, Keith Vieira, thank you so much for being here today. We're out of time. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Spotlight Now continues in just a moment.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Ka'ana'ana, connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders and taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, great conversation here today on tourism as the Hawaii Tourism Conference happens right now at the Convention Center. A lot being discussed there, and we really got a sense of the state of tourism. You heard from various officials here that this continues to be a work in progress, of course, after the pandemic, after Maui, but the leadership is pretty confident in the way that we're moving.
Yeah, I mean, the one bright spot they see, of course, is that HTA has been shorn up, that there is support from the legislature. They have $63 million right now in allocated funding. Mufi Hannemann pushing now to get $80 million to continue to do the messaging that they're doing around the country and around the world. And they say it's really necessary because there has been so much mixed messaging after the wildfires, saying that tourists aren't necessarily sure that they want to come back. Can they come back? Is it appropriate? And so they really want to overcome that because, as you heard Keith Vieira say at the end there, the festive season is looking pretty weak.
Yeah, very startling to hear his concern over what the tourism numbers could look like heading into the latter part of this year and then going into Q1 of next year, something that no doubt has got the attention of tourism leaders and those who are in the industry. But some exciting news about some potential opportunities that, Mufi Hannemann talking about partnerships with the LA Rams and Clippers that will expand and help bring different visitors to the island. Mufi coming off of a trip to Southern California as well as Japan to really help promote Hawaii in different means. But then you also heard on the other side, Keith Vieira saying, that wasn't enough. They needed more money to be able to do more.
Yeah, and also interesting to hear from Kalani about the stewardship programs that are happening and the real emphasis in making sure that the entire community is reflected in the decision making when it comes to tourism. Next week here on Spotlight Now, we're going to be focusing on families. The Surgeon General released a report saying that families are stressed. We're going to be focusing on parent stress in particular with a therapist and some nonprofit resources. We do hope you join us.
Yeah, I mean, family stress, I'm stressed, I have a family, everyone's stressed. It'd be a good way to kind of learn how to deal with that stress. An episode you don't want to miss. We leave you now with a beautiful shot of Honolulu Harbor. We'll see you right here next week.